When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. Very interesting quote. Very interestingly said. The way I interpret that is deep sense of meaning comes from purpose. Lacking purpose means you distract yourselves with the wrong behavior. And when you distract yourselves with the wrong behavior, you have consequences of that behavior that impact you negatively over time. And it's like it's hard to come out from that. What do you guys think?
I agree as well. I think like one of the things that there's so many categories to pleasure, right? And one of the interesting things that I've come across with pleasure was this Christian like theology of the 7 deadly sins. I don't know if you've ever heard of 7 Deadly Sins. You've probably heard of the anime. Well, I'm talking about the actual.
There's an anime called Seven Deadly
Sins.
Sins.
Yeah,
what's it about?
Well, it's actually about 7 deadly sins.
So what are they? It says gluttony.
Yeah. So basically
Gluttony.
There's gluttony. I don't know. It's one of them.
Gluttony, and then there's greed, there's sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. And basically, they represent like the immoral or destructive behaviors of like our human behaviors, right? And they are often linked with like indulging or just like hedonistic type of behaviors that we come across. And I think part of it is also like due to the lack of purpose, or just usually it's probably comes from like the lack of purpose, which then leads to like a misguided pursuit of pleasure, that you're like emptiness. You try and find things to just fill yourself up with.
Can I say, let's talk about, before we go into what those sins are and what they look like, let's talk about why do people struggle to find meaning. So we know there's lack of purpose, but there's also a lot of other different factors. Like, I mean, people distract themselves a lot, which stops them from finding that meaning. Now, there's that little bit of a cycle, but I'll leave it to you guys to.
So I feel like it's very hard to find meaning nowadays, mainly due to what society kind of tells you to do. Like from the get-go, what does society tell you to do, right? Get up, study, finish your 12 years of study, either get further education or get straight into work, for the next 30, 40 years, take 1 or 2 weeks of annual leave every year, and get married, have a kid, and raise that child, and that's it. That's your end of life, right? So for a lot of people, that is their purpose. So you're told what your purpose is, and imagine 60, 70 years of being constantly told that is your purpose, and especially from your own parents as well. How many of us have been told from our parents that is what it is? I remember growing up and mum's like, oh, you have a great life, just make sure you finish school, you do good in school. After school, it was HSC. After HSC, it was uni. After uni, it was like, get a job. And now the next phase for me is, can you find a girl to get married to? And I know what the next 3 is after that. So you're kind of essentially told your purpose constantly, and it requires a level of, I would say, not just energy, but a journey that you need to a self-journey that you need to be able to go on, which requires time, and really time to yourself to be able to figure out what your overall journey is. And that's shaped on very much based on your relationships that you hold with people, the experiences that you've received. And for a lot of people, it's suddenly gaining a piece of enlightenment. And then all of a sudden you have this journey that you've kind of gone on, and you now kind of know what your purpose is. But that's me. Like, I would say, I could be wrong, but most people will not go on that journey. They will maybe kind of go on a tangent to go on that journey, but they always come back. And it's really hard to kind of take that, because generally, like, I would say the perfect example would be Buddha, right? Buddha was the one that went ahead and broke every single connection to this earthly realm with people, everything, to be able to find out what their purpose was and then gain enlightenment. But for them to be able to do that, they had to sacrifice so many things and also break out of the norm. Because from my understanding, Buddha was a prince, was he not? He was a prince that was supposed to basically had his life set ahead for him. So his purpose, once again, very similar to what people nowadays have, their purpose is already set for them. But the only time he was able to go ahead and find out what his real purpose in life was being able to break every single connection that he had to this earthly realm, I'd say.
So just to summarize your point, it's fundamentally it's being told what your purpose is from a young age and not figuring things out for yourself.
Yeah.
Does that come from a place of, so when people give you that, do you think it comes from a place of comfort when that purpose is provided constantly?
Security, huge.
Like, why do you think that's
security.
provided as a parent? Let's say you enforce those purposes. Where does that come from?
As a parent, I would say it's one of the most.
You're a parent?
From a parent's perspective, I would say what it comes.
You're a parent from a parent's perspective.
Hey, I've got a child in Brazil. Okay. No, so I would say generally from a parent's perspective that you want the safest thing for your kid, right? And if you have hundreds of years and maybe even more of people following that same line, I don't think that line's, maybe little things have changed, but education, work, family has generally been that secure line. So you want to be, and if that's worked for you and worked for everyone around you, then you're going to say that's the right thing and you're going to provide that to your child because that is what security is. And anyone that's kind of broken out of that to find a purpose, people get lost in that journey as well. So there's no guarantee when you break everything that you are going to be able to find your purpose. There's also the chance that you can get lost. And by getting lost, you may then also, not become, I don't know, for them, it would be most likely the fact that you're probably not a productive member of society or you're not part of the norm and therefore you're an outsider and therefore you're not secure. Therefore, you're not going to have a good quality of life. And, generally from a parent's perspective, they don't want you to go through that. So they're just going to give you the most safest bet possible.
Yeah, it's I agree with what you're saying with like how the reason with like why people struggle finding meaning is because they are told like what their purpose is. And I think that idea of comfort and stability is why they are afraid of moving out from what other people have told them since they were a child. They might sacrifice and lose the comfort and security that they've been provided for. So then I think that connects to like the idea of like fear of failure, like fearing that you're going to make the wrong choice, or like, how do I know that the purpose that I have instead is correct? And you're also being the resistance against everyone else that says, no, your purpose is this based on school or what your family or someone else says. So there's like, I think that's one of the biggest pieces is just fear of failure and becoming, and going against like the herd of what other people think you should be doing. So that I think is what really also prevents people from finding their meaning. And another thing I think is also because people distance themselves from like their goals, especially like they have like their purpose and everything defined. They have all these goals, but then they make a distance. Like they feel like they are so far away from who they can or should be, and that there's too much to sacrifice or give up at stake. And there's all these like societal pressures and everything that they have. And because they make it so distant away from themselves, they think like there's no point of me pursuing this. I'm already in a comfort place. I might as well stick with where I am.
Mm. To add to that, I think it comes from lack of experiences as well and like self-knowledge. So I think in order to find your purpose and to find what you truly stand for and what you mean, what your meaning is on this life, on this earth, what is your purpose? Why do you exist? You have to go through a lot of experiences. Those experiences are whether it's work, education, meeting different people, travel, religion, spirituality. Very important to get those experiences to actually find what your meaning is. And that all comes from a place of getting out of your comfort zone. It's making yourself feel uncomfortable so you learn and grow. So yeah, that's a good point there. Comparison as well, it's a big one. I think with ethnic households, we get compared to a lot of different people, and
A story of our lives, huh?
yeah, and I think it's not ideal. I mean, comparison is a thief of joy, right? Like,
Look,
you can inspire, but you shouldn't compare.
no, you know what? That you're right. I think that's even something I had to learn as well. For, like, you know, I grew up in a household where comparison was everything, and now obviously they didn't do it. Their plan wasn't to, you know, make me upset or hurt me through those comments. It was more like they believed that was a drive. You know, maybe it was a driver for them, or it was maybe using fear as a way to say, look, if you know, look at these people. That's the quality of life you can attain if you, choose to be like them. But, you know, I'm, guilty of this with my little brother. I would, everyone knows well, like I would constantly tell him, like, you know, if you want a good quality of life, you've got to be like XYZ, like you've got to do XYZ. But at the end of the day, Shivnesh has put it like, put pretty clearly there, you know, you can't be putting comparison, but inspiring them is most likely the way to go. But I think there's a lot more other things as well. Like a child is such a complex individual as well. They're taking in so much information. So yes, you can inspire them, but then what do you also do when inspiration doesn't work?
Well, it's the way you inspire. I think inspiration does work. I think it comes down to the qualities and the values you sell. In the sense that if you have an entrepreneur who's done really well, you know, successful business, they're expanding, they're growing, they're making the money. When you compare yourself, you're like, oh, like I haven't been able to do that. I don't know if I can do that. But if you actually inspire for them, you become, this is my favorite word, curious. you start to become curious as to how they did it, and so that in itself is an inspiration. You see that there was commonality between, perhaps early on there would have been commonality, right? That person would have started young, they would have started broke, they would have started with not much resources, not much knowledge, and it was a journey for them. So once you become interested in their journey, selling the person's journey, in my opinion, or inspiring from the journey is more beneficial than inspiring from the outcome. I think that's the best, if I could summarize it, is you're better off looking at a person's journey, learning from it, and really taking that as an inspiration than looking at the end product and thinking, I can't do that. Because the journey, I think people would be surprised how much everyone's journey is so similar to a certain degree. I mean, you've got people that have been fortunate to be given great opportunities in life and good for them, but there's people that have had to really grind, have had to really struggle to find it. And I think that's the beauty of it. It's the struggle that builds the resiliency.
You know, I agree. There's a few self-made, well, one's a billionaire and the rest are self-made millionaires in Australia, some located in Perth, Melbourne, Queensland. And I've actually been following them on Instagram for quite some time. And it's so interesting to see how close-knit these groups are. Fair enough, yes, because they have a very similar net worth. But really when you see the deeper meaning behind because they're quite public about their friendships, and they try to advise the people that kind of look at them on the platform, and they generally praise each other and say, you know, I've been so glad to get into business with XYZ. I've been glad to have you as a partner. I've had, it's been great to have you along for my life journey. Completely, on the fact these guys have had a similar struggle. So a lot of these guys had that similar struggle and they started their business a similar way. And that's why they've been able to kind of build on those relationships going forward and like work super hard. So you do really, at the end of the day, pull in people similar to yourself.
Yeah, it's inspiring from your common people.
Yeah, agreed. Really good points about surrounding yourself with the right people and like environment, and especially like problems creating opportunity essentially, and that instead of focusing on the destination, which everyone focuses on, that makes you more distance from your goals. Why don't you just focus on like the little, because everyone starts somewhere, right? When you look at the journey of all those guys who are so successful that you're inspired by, when you look at the beginning and initial where they started, it's like you can almost most likely relate to it because they all started from like humbling beginnings. And then you just, instead of looking at it by comparing yourself at the end result, which you don't even know how many years of struggle they've gone through, how much they had to sacrifice. You don't see any of that through just an image of like a Lamborghini or something. But that's what they had to go through as a process. So then you can just look at it with, and this is something that I do with my cousin now more. Before I used to be like, comparing and stuff. And I'm like, it's not a good way to actually inspire. So what I said to her instead is like, okay, this is like where you are now, and this is where you can become. But why don't you look at like what type of traits or qualities or things do you need to get to that stage? So I make her like critically think, and as you said, the buzzword curiosity. That's what I try to inspire in her. Then that way she can see it for herself. Because you can't. It's not really healthy to just be like, if you do this, then you'll become this, and state it like that. It's better to make them find that answer through themselves, but inspiring like curiosity and like critical thinking to make them think.
It's how we've been raised, unfortunately, is the fact that you just compare, you see the end product, that's where you're going to be. But if you actually believe the process, it's better. I've got a question for you guys. There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of words thrown around environment and surrounding yourself with the best people. What are some qualities that you guys look for when you want to surround yourself with the best people or people that are inspirational, etc.? What do you look for? So for myself, like, I look for someone that's curious. Someone that
wants to be friends with Curious George. I'm dead.
Yeah, and I
Curious
think
George. That came to my mind when you kept saying
Curious George. What?
Now I know what cost you to get him.
He's a monkey on the loose.
Go on with your...
Someone that's curious. Someone that that openly challenges you, right? So like, we were having a topic before we started this about, I disagreed with both of you on certain things, right? But the thing about that is, there's no ego. There's no such thing as that my idea is better than yours. I think differently to the way you both think, right? Now your thinking comes from your experiences. My thinking comes from my experiences, right? So the fact that we can sit here and talk about that without thinking, oh, that person is dumb or that person's stupid. That is very important to me. Yeah. Because...
Or even having any anger towards it. Like at the end of the day, it's just differing views. And if you just take a step back and you realize like everyone has a different view and their views come from somewhere. Like for you to get angry over it makes no sense. But nowadays, how common is that? You know, different opinions automatically mean, hey, bro, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Like you're pissing me off.
Yeah, it's really it's a bad state of mind. So for me, it's curiosity, someone that challenges me to have an open conversation without judgment. And I think you guys would agree with that, but just keen to hear you've both dealt with different types of people, given your background and your experiences. What would you guys, and how has that changed over time? I want to know that's a very important distinction to make as well.
So as of now, the biggest things that I look for is ambition, loyalty. I would say this is a really funny one that I wouldn't have expected, but love I think is quite important as well. Someone that's just, similar to ambition, but just highly driven as well. And just, I don't know how to put this in words, but how they treat people around them. So their mums, their dads, the people that generally a lot of people take for granted, how they treat people like that. So I guess those are what's really important to me. Ambition coming from the fact that I constantly want to be around people that want to better themselves, do better for the world, or, create something, break out of that standard, nothing wrong with the 9 to 5, but do something more. You have 24 hours in a day and we spend so much of it, doing little things. We should make the most of it. Loyalty, I guess I'm a big thing in regards to people being very, very close with their brotherhood, and when push comes to shove, they're there for you. I think a big thing for us growing up is that, for me personally, I didn't have siblings when I was young. I was around a lot of people that had big families, big siblings, and I always longed for a big family. I started being friends with so many people, right? I want to be friends with everyone. And it was only till I got older that I realized I was having all these friends because I wanted, like a family. And it took me years of multiple friendships, from some friendships that even lasted from the day I was born up until now, who, I'm not as close anymore. But luckily I can say that I have like a family now, and I created that through friends. Who were just, for shivvy at the end of the day. There's a guy, when we first met each other, we just bullied each other about our religions. And then I was like, it ain't no way we're going to become like best friends. And then, it all happened.
Oh, that time I threatened to throw a wasif off the third floor.
That's so funny.
Love is an interesting one for me. I think, especially as guys, we don't really talk about that as much, and we don't really use that word. But I think, when someone is being able to openly say, like, I love you, like, you're someone that's extremely important to me. There's like, it's not romantic. It's a very platonic feeling as well, but it's much deeper than that. So being able to see someone that can actually provide those they're able to actually be open about that. I think that's quite important, because a lot of people, it's really hard for them to say that. But yeah, I guess that's my main ones, Wasif.
I know we've taken off most of it, so I'll leave it to you to probably give something different if you have any.
No, I think you guys have nailed it pretty well. I mean, it's very similar to both of yours. I think the best way I can break it down, very simple, is I'd say like intelligence. And by intelligence, I don't mean like Albert Einstein book smart type of intelligence. I mean curiosity intelligence.
Nice.
Yes, I had to throw that word in. So curiosity intelligence, and then there's also like having integrity, which is based upon what you're saying, and just energy. Like you need to be surrounded with people of high energy. Like you don't want to be around people that are like in their low tier, like gossiping, talking trash about other people. This like guilty, shameful type of thing. It's different when you go through like, tragic events. You got to obviously be there for your close people, like, of course, be there for them. But it's when you're choosing to be in that state,
yes,
and you're surrounding yourself with those types of individuals. They're not gonna. In you're a person who have high energy, who's like focused on like peace, joy, contentment. Yeah. You cannot live with people that are around with low energy like that.
Yeah, because what happens, right? You'll either end up having to absorb their energy,
or you
can hope they absorb your energy instead. But if they don't, then at one point or another, you are going to be negatively affected.
Yeah, so I think that's why it's very important to have those three things, and that's how I would very quickly summarize mine. Yeah.
No, that's really well said. I think we've covered it pretty well. Like we've answered why people struggle to find meaning, where that comes from, the purpose, and the key things, qualities that we look for when surrounding ourselves with good people, or people that we want to surround ourselves that are going to push us and essentially make up our environment, make up our future. So it's really well said. We'll wrap up here, but we'll call it farewell.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Navs. Thanks, Wasif.
Thanks, Navs. Thanks, Shiv. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone.